So the hang on a minute, let me close this. Pardon me. Yeah, so if the breaking news is not Swiss related and there is no liquidity at 5 o'clock on a Monday morning in dollar Swiss, I have to translate that order into a euro dollar order. And similarly with cable, again presuming, there is no market. I'd like you to try and visualize what this looks like on a Monday morning when the dealer gets into his room, sits down at his desk. There is no liquidity. There is no market. It's a massive vacuum. You're presuming that the market is going to open where it closed, but if there was a major event that happened, then that's not going to happen. So somebody has got to start the ball rolling. If there are massive stop losses, if the market is, for instance, very, very long of U.S. dollars, there are going to be a lot of downside stops, for instance, or a lot of topside stops in euro dollar as the U.S. dollar longs are forced to get out of the market. So the way this is the difference between this Monday morning and all other times is this is just a reactionary event. There is the dealers are not going to make a lot of money out of this event. They are just they're just trying to find a level where the market is going to settle down. So it can be quite a scary time for a dealer sitting there with nothing but stop losses in front of him and trying to find out how to where these are going to be triggered. Now the retail, I presume here most of us are dealing here in the retail space. And the market there does not open until maybe, I know during the Sydney winter it's 2 hours later, and during the Sydney summer it's 4 hours later. So there's a 2 or a 4 hour gap when the interbank market is open and before the retail market has opened. So obviously a lot of scope for the market to move around in that time. And one thing to be wary of here, or to be aware of, is that if the market gaps on a Monday morning, your stop will be filled wherever the retail market opens. So at the moment that's at sort of 9 o'clock on a Sydney morning, and Monday morning is when the retail market opens, and it could open a long way away from where it closed on Friday night, and you will be filled at that level. But you should also be aware that if you leave a take profit order over the weekend, you should also be filled at the level where it opens, not at some level in between. Now, some brokers have been trying to get away. It's pretty dodgy practice, but I know a few have been caught up with recently. But just ensure that the broker fills your take profit order where the market opens, because they're very keen to fill your stop loss orders at that level. So look, there's not much I can say really about Monday mornings. It's just it's a mess. The dealer sits down. He's not making any money by triggering stops or anything. There's just no liquidity. It starts, look, if nothing happened over the weekend, as is generally the case, the market just opens, pretty quietly where it closed in New York. But if something major happened over the weekend, then you could get some, just a vacuum. It's bids and offers 150 points apart. That's has not been uncommon in the past, and gradually the market tries to find a level where it works, and stops get triggered, and that's just the nature of Monday mornings. So just to be aware of that. But I think of most interest to us here is going to be what happens at basically all other times, and this is what we call the stop loss hunt. Now you can. On my website, there is also I have, hang on, where can I find it? And on my website anyway, you'll be able to find a brief rundown on why traders do this. But I think the easiest way to do it is to go through an example. And in this case, I'm going to pick the Aussie dollar because I know there are some large stops not too far away from where we presently are. So let's go back again to the market structure. We have lots of retail brokers, and you will have your order with a retail broker, and they will either monitor that order in-house on their own dealing desk, or more likely, as those orders start to grow, in other words, when you get a large amount of stop losses at one level, they will pass that order on to one of their banking counterparts, because the bank has access to a lot more liquidity and is better able to manage large volume if and when they need it. So yeah, Mike, here you can see the web link here, blog.fxww.com. Now, yeah, so the retail broker, let's say in Aussie dollar, the market is tending towards short. It's been building shorts for quite a large amount of time, and your retail broker has got 75% of all open Aussie dollar positions are short, let's say. And they all are looking at pretty much the same chart. They all see pretty much the same, levels on the chart, and they see where the resistance is, and they all say, oh, let's all put our stop losses there. And because, certainly in the retail space, a lot of people pay attention to technicals. Now then so the bank, let's call it Bank A, receives orders from the brokers he's dealing with, and they're all pretty much pointing the same way. Stop loss orders above. Yes, let me just put it in here. So let's call it Bank. So Bank A, and so he's got stop loss orders to buy. Let's say to buy 150 million at 1.0525, and that's from his retail brokers. Okay, so that in itself, that's not it's not a large amount of money. Market is quite easily able to cope with that. He doesn't have to worry too much. Then his also of a lot of interest here. Excuse me. Options books. Option players trade, while they're trading their gamma, they trade inside the range. And once the range breaks, then they need to, switch their hedging a bit. So you look at, these are the options traders. Options traders, once again, they're all looking at the same level. And they've got, they want to buy, remember, these guys can be quite big. So they're, a total of buying, say, 620 million at exactly the same level, 1.0525, right? Okay. Sorry. Oops. Sorry about this. Excel is driving me mad. Okay. Anyway, let's say the amount is 620. Okay, so we had here 150, here the 620 from the options markets. Then we look at hedge funds. Now, and remember back to our structure, we had like real money funds and sovereigns. They normally don't put, I've never known a sovereign to put a stop loss order in the market. That's just not the way they operate. And they're always buying dips and selling rallies. I've never known them to trade a break. The retail space, we've got options traders, and then we've got hedge funds. Now, the hedge fund positions could be massive. Literally, the big global macro funds, if they're playing one particular pair, they could have, a $10 billion position. Now they're clever enough to not stop all of that out of the same level, and they're going to realize they'll just drive the market crazy. But let's say they're short and they need to buy $1 billion on stop at all at the same level. So we've looked at the chart and we've seen this big level, 105.25, and Bank A has got basically 1.6 billion to buy on stop if it gets there. Now, this is a problem for him. He's thinking to himself, okay, if something happens, the market starts to gap higher, and it suddenly touches 105.25, and I have to buy 1.6 billion, what's going to happen? The market is going to gap. Without a doubt, the market will gap higher. He may be lucky and run into a major source of liquidity at that level, but more than likely, he's also looking at the charts, and he thinks to himself, that could be a, just fresh air. You know, we could have hit a vacuum, an air pocket. Exactly, we could hit an air pocket just at that level. So he says, what am I going to do? Now let's say the market is currently trading 104.75. So he sat down, market's trading at 104.75, and he's got all these stops. So what he does is he calls his mate in Bank B, and he says, oh, what are you hearing? You know, he's not going to tell him straight away what he's hearing, but, you know, there's a little bit of, what's the word, playful, you know, trying to find out from the other guy what he's got without giving away too much information. But basically, let's say Bank A finds out that Bank B, who's around about the same size bank as he is, has also got stops at the same level. So he's guessing, ooh, that could be another billion there. And then there's Bank C, D, E, F, and G, and whatever as well. So he's starting to get a little bit worried. He thinks to himself, okay, it's not only my 1.6 billion. Now look at, I am looking at a bit of an extreme example here. The amounts could be, you know, probably, you know, quite different to this, but it is possible. So Bank B has also got stops, and then we've got C, D, you know, C, D, E, F, whatever, you know. E. So you could have here 6 big banks, you know, adding up to a total of, I don't know, you're guessing there could be $5 billion worth of stops above 105.25. Now, if the market gets to 105.25 and suddenly these 6 guys start to buy 5 billion Aussie, where's it going to stop? You know, I don't know. I'm guessing here maybe 105.80. If you're lucky, that's where it's going to stop. There will be an air pocket. It will gap, and it will go very fast. So this guy, let's look at Bank A. He ends up buying his 1.6 billion on average, if he's lucky, at 105.75 in supposedly normal market conditions. Now you are one of these guys. You had your 1 million Aussie dollar short position. With a stop at 25, and your retail broker comes back to you and says, "Oh, you've been stopped out at 75." How are you going to feel about that? I can guess. I can hear the screams of derision already. So yeah, you're going to be pretty unhappy about that. And the sales guys who are talking to the hedge funds, they're saying to their dealer, "You can't do this to me. You know, you can't fill these guys here. These are our best customers. We earn a lot of money from them. You can't do this to us. You need to fill it at a better rate." Anyway, it is a huge headache for this dealer, okay? So he knows this in advance, so he's got to do something about it. Now, just to make my math easier, let's presume that he's got $1 billion worth of stops at 105.25, just to make my maths easier. He sits down, the market is trading here, 104.75, so he's going to do something. So he says, okay, I'm going to buy 20 at 1.0476. Okay, so he's now got a position. He's 20 long at 104.76, and he sees what happens. Market starts to tick a little bit higher. It's pretty quiet, but it's moving a little bit. It's now trading 80.81. Okay, so he says, okay, I'll buy 35 at 1.0481 and see what happens. So he's now $55 million long, 104.79. This right here, and it is starting to tick a little bit higher. So he says, I'll trade it a little bit. So he sells 5 at, I don't know, 1.0489. Yeah, so he's feeling his way around the market, trying to figure out what's going on. Remember, he's 50 long. Then he starts hearing from some of his other mates, okay, it's getting, you know, it's now trading 94.95, 95.96, and he hears there may be more stops above the figure. Okay, so he decides to have a punt. So he buys 100. He's going to try and drive those stops. It's trading 94.96. He buys 100 on average at, say, 99. Yeah? He's 150 long, at 104.92. The market breaks above the figure. Okay, so it gets above 105, and now these stops over here at 105.25 are starting to become, you know, it's getting closer. So now he's starting to get a little bit worried. Say, you know, he still continues to trade it a bit. He sells 10, and like, I don't know, 1, 5, 10. Remember, he's got some risk here. If suddenly he's sitting $140 long at 140.90, and something happens, you know, some bad news comes out, the market could just gap lower, because not only he's long, he's probably long 140. Remember, these other guys are also long 100, probably. And this market is going to start gapping lower quite quickly if bad news comes out. So it's not risk-free. There is risk involved for for the dealers. But we're looking at a normal, run-of-the-mill type market here. Everything is going according to plan. Market is still hanging around 105.10. Remember, he's only got 15 pips to go before his big stop loss. Everyone's starting to get a bit nervous. He's 140 long. It is trading 11.12, and he thinks, okay, I'm going to go for this. So he buys 200 on average at 1.05, 14. Yeah? These guys, remember, these guys are now starting to panic. The first guy in gets, he's going to have a big advantage. $340 long this trader is, and he's, he's running a huge risk. 340 million, that's for every 10 pips that it moves is $340,000. So if the market suddenly gaps lower, he could be out of a job. So it's a risky, it's a risky thing to do. But you don't think about that in the heat of the moment. All you can think is, I've got $1 billion worth of stops. I've got to trigger them. Now this is the crux of the issue. He needs to trigger those stops, or either he could end up losing his job, or it could drop off a little bit if he doesn't get them done. He gets stopped out of his position, and then it suddenly gaps up. So not only does he lose money, but also there's major slippage on the stops later on during the day. So a lot of downside that he can see. I know, from an outsider's perspective, it seems that it's just pure greed, but he's just trying to do an efficient job. I'm being probably a little bit overly fair to the interbank dealer, but it's just not a cut and dried thing where he's trying to stuff everybody. It's just the way the market is set up, and he is trying to ensure that the liquidity goes through the market in the most efficient manner. Okay, let's presume he's bought his 200 at 150 at 105.14. He's 340 long. The market is trading 18.20. It's trading now 21.23. So he thinks to himself, okay, what he's got to do is get it through this level. So he buys whatever he needs to, 300. There's a lot of liquidity at 105.25, let's say. But he's determined. It could be a barrier. Let's say there's a barrier there. Everybody knows about the barrier, but excuse me, getting all excited with these big numbers. So he buys 300 at 105.25. Now look at his position. He's $640 million long at 105.14 on average, and he needs the market to trade above this level. If it doesn't, he cannot trigger the stops. So he's bought lots at 25. If it doesn't trade at 26, remember, this is going to start falling, and he has to start selling like crazy, as do these guys. Now, this does happen sometimes if our friend the Chinaman is the guy protecting the barrier, because he is bigger than all of these guys put together, and they just can't handle his size, and he can defeat them. So, you need very good information. If you buy 300 here at 25, and it's still 25 offered, then you probably start to get worried. But let's presume he buys his 300 at 25, and it starts to move higher. So he buys his next 350. I don't know, maybe it's starting to get fast, and he ends up buying these at 34. Don't know. Yeah. So he's bought $990 million at 105.21 on average. Yeah. He bought the last ones at 34. But he's got to fill $1 billion worth of stops. I hope you're following me here. So he has to fill $1 billion worth of stops, and he's taking a little bit of slippage on them. Obviously, it was a fast market, but probably best he can do is 2.5 pips, say. He fills them $1 billion. Everybody gets filled at the same rate, 105.27.5. He's still 10 short, but he's not worried about that. The market is now trading at 105.56 or whatever. Yeah, so it's been a fast market. It started to gap higher, but all of the orders have been filled at reasonably decent levels. So yeah, the retail guys, okay, everybody's unhappy about being stopped out, but there's no big slippage, and the option guys and the hedge funds go, oh yeah, everybody complains. Of course, you just complain about being stopped out. This guy has actually done a reasonably good job, the dealer. He has, rather than sit around and do nothing and wait for the $1 billion worth of stops to be triggered, and the market gaps 50 pips higher, and everybody is upset, he has managed the available liquidity in the market quite well with the information he had, and he has, he has made a little bit of money, well, a reasonable amount of money in the process, yeah. But I'm not. Yes, I know it's become a bit of a hobby, this the stop hunting, because these guys can make money doing it. And I just want to knock here a couple of myths, I think, that are in the market, that there are algos and various funds who are set up with automatic they've got software tracking order books, etc., and then diving into the market. I do not believe that to be the case. I know for a fact 10 years ago it was, and more into the into at least 2 retail brokers allowed hedge funds access to their order books. And whilst you could say that's that's not complete information, but it certainly did give the hedge fund a very deep insight into roughly where the orders were, and that gave them a huge advantage as to, because what they would do is sit around, do nothing, and then just when the market goes 23 bid, let's say here, and then they buy some, because they know there's going to be a large amount of stops go off, and they're only trying to make 10, the hedge funds was only trying to make 10 or 15 pips. But yeah, look, at very, like a dodgy practice, no doubt about it. But to the best of my knowledge, there were no algos set up on any bank order books, and the banks just cannot afford to do it. There's no way they're going to give out all of that information, just to one source, so that source can make money off it. It's just not going to happen. So the guys who are driving the stops are the bank dealers. The guy sitting in the bank, at the dealing desk, he's the one who sees the entire order book, talks to his sales guys over here, and they tell him what's going on. So he is the guy who makes the decision to in effect chase after those stops. Now, at any time during this process, he could abort. Like, let's take, for instance, last night could have been a good example. It got to a high of 15, I think 15 paid was the high. Maybe all these stops are in place, and this guy gets to, let me just get rid of this one, and this one. So this guy got to, he was 340 long, and the market's up to 105.15. He's long at this level, and suddenly the market starts to turn. So would have had to abort. That's a very, very, very quick decision he's got to make, and he might have sold his, sold 340 probably for, he might have, I don't know, he lost a couple of pips even, so, So anyway, he would have taken a small loss. Well, if you call it, 70 grand loss a small loss, he would have taken a small loss on that particular trade. But that's his job. That's what he's got to do. So he's got to gauge the liquidity, look at all the orders in the market, and try and do the best that he can. So yeah, I think that explains pretty much why banks chase after stops. Retail brokers have no interest in stopping you out. Now, there are some who will, if the market is trading, you have a stop for your $500,000 at 104.76, and the market is trading at 73.74. Can they somehow just push the market up and take it back down and stop you out? Oh yeah, I guess they can. That's certainly possible. But that's, I mean, it's not a good practice, but it is sort of you're basically at the market where you've been stopped out. So I don't think anybody can have any major complaints if they're stopped out. Just it's only 1 pip away from the high. But in essence, it's not. Retail brokers have no interest in triggering your stops. They don't make any money from it. They're not in a position to drive these big stop loss hunts. They're not. but they do have some good information. So if you can find out from your retail broker where all the stops are, then you could be on a you could be onto something. I mean, and there are. I mean, I know a couple of young guys who try and trade, who try to make money purely from these, analyzing the order books and where the stops might be. So there's not very many situations, maybe 2-3 times a month, when there's sort of a perfect setup. You look at the CFTC, the IMM positioning data, and you look at the what the prime brokers are reporting, and you look at what the retail brokers are reporting, and everything looks like a perfect setup. And you see a big technical level, and if that's all the case, then you can think to yourself, well, maybe these stops are going to go off, and you can then trade accordingly. And literally, you can start building. You're probably not trading in 250 million, maybe it's 250,000, but you can pretty much build just like this guy built over here. So I think that pretty much covers it. I'm sorry, I see some people didn't have sound. The soul singer didn't have any sound. Wilson Pickett. So maybe we should start singing. So if there are any questions, please fire ahead now. I'll try and keep up with them, and keep them in the chat section if you would. Thank you. Go. Yes, ask by chat, please. Ken. I don't know, where is the Q&A? Somebody point me to it. I've lost it. Yeah, you're welcome, Mike. I hope it all made sense. And no, Ken, no, not automated algos, definitely not. I think this is very much something which needs a human input. Look, it's possible, but I have never heard of it. And the dealer still needs to be able to assess where the market is. Logically, yes, there could be. You could have an algo, but I don't think so. Yeah, look at it, Mike. This the bank dealers. Yeah, I mean every day I ever went into work and sat in the bank dealing room. Pretty much the first thing I did was talk to the voice brokers and ring 3 or 4 other dealers and just find out what they're thinking. And you always knew the guy with the loose lips who was liable to tell you, because he just wanted to sound like a big note, and he'd tell you about all the big orders he had, and he'd generally tell you the right levels. You might have to divide stuff by 2, because people tend to exaggerate, but it's very, very important for the bank dealer to ask the other guys. And look, obviously you're going to have some good friends. You will have some good friends who will tell you, what's going on. Mike, look, generally the bank will make quite a bit of money out of this, no doubt about it. Let's look at this one. Where I can't remember what we did here. He was 200 long, and then I think he bought 350 at. We better do it a bit of right. I'm just sorry. Bear with me 1 second. So he was 690 long. I'm just trying to work out what they might make on this one, and he bought 300 out. Yeah. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. Hang on. Don't ask too many questions. I'll get all confused. Yeah. So in this case, look at he's still short 10 million at 112. The market is trading below 106. He's made 600 grand profit. So it's not a bad day's work. In this, and here you're talking about massive positions. But look at, I'm exaggerating obviously a lot here. Would he take at this stage of the game here a $350 million position, and we're still 10 pips away from the stop and a big barrier? Yeah, probably not. So would he make 600,000? No. Would he make 100, 150? Yeah, possibly. Something like that. Kareem, the data you use to find stops, you don't. You need to know somebody. And by the way, just be careful about all these, supposed excellent sources of order information that are out there. Most of them not worth very much. I think a lot of it's made up. So just be very careful. Make sure you're getting your information from a good source. Look at Ken, mental stops. Not if the market's 15, 20 points away. It's just too risky. But actually, before I forget it, let me tell you. There have been stories of, and I've seen them happen as well, where hedge funds use the banks. So for instance, in a case like this, the hedge fund could go to all of the banks and he gives them a $500 or $1 billion stop loss buy order above the market, way above the market. And all the banks get all excited and they start buying and buying and buying. But actually, the hedge fund is a seller. So he is selling here at 10, 14, 15, 20. So he sells everything he wants to sell at this level, and then he simply calls up the bank and says, oh, sorry, forget about my order. I've changed my mind. And the banks are left sitting on these really long positions, and they have no stops. They have no stops to trigger to automatically take them out of that position. And then you get a mad panic on the downside. So there have been situations where hedge funds have used the banks, but only once. The banks find out pretty quickly, and it won't happen a second time. Mike, yes, in general, they build positions slowly at first. Yes, exactly. That's correct. He punts big once it gets within a few pips of the level. That's the only time he will take the risk of punting big. And once it's 50 points away, he will only take a position 50 pips away if it's a huge stop. In general, I would say it would need, in normal market conditions, to get within 10 to 15 pips of the stop. Then you start preparing for it. In a fast market, then you might be preparing a bit sooner than that, depending on the volatility. Ken, I think the big fund trading against the bank. I think that's what I just explained. I hope. With the mental stops. Yeah. There could be some guys with mental stops and they just come in and buy at market, just manage it themselves. Yeah, and a lot of the big hedge funds are probably sophisticated enough to do that. But they're part of the market. They understand that the dealer will make some money out of this, but his main intention really is to, just as I said earlier, manage the liquidity best so that he can have the best outcome for everybody. Not that being stopped out is a good outcome, but I'll tell you what, being stopped out with 50-point slippage, that's a terrible outcome. Yeah, so look, Ken, again, the large stops and bank books and option players are a huge part of this, and because they are part of the bank in a lot of cases, the options desk. Retail, of course, would be, that's 20% of the market now. So, when you look at dollar yen a few months ago, when there were 85% of the market, the retail market was all long, all those stops are going to be positioned in the same sort of place. And look, as we just talked about, hedge funds will, some will leave stops and others won't. And the less sophisticated ones, like the general CTAs and the like, they will all leave their stops with the banks, for sure. Look, Vivian, it depends. I mean, and remember, it's not the bank who's picking the stop level here. It is the market as a whole who decide where to put their stops. The bank is just looking at them, and they just see a conglomeration of orders all at one level, and that triggers their interest. So they don't decide. It's you. You make the decision where the stop goes, and it may be the case that 85% of the market make the same decision, and then you get huge gaps. So look, we've all seen them, particularly here in Asia. You see the what we call the air pocket, and the market just hits something, and gaps, 20, 25, 45, 60 pips, something like that. And that's when that's exactly what's happening at that level. So it's So if I missed any questions yet, if I have, can you shout them back? Yeah, Mike, read the hedge funds again. Stop using the... Yeah, look at it. It would be ideal, actually, if everybody was able to manage their positions themselves all the time without placing these stop losses in the market. You know, that would be an ideal. I mean, not something I definitely recommend to people, but I don't use stop losses. I keep my positions, you know, relatively small, so that it's unlikely that, you know, I can be hurt by a, you know, sudden gap of 150 or 200 pips, and then I just say to, you know, my broker, my banker, just give me a ring if the market gets to this level. I'll just leave call levels. He doesn't know if I'm a buyer or a seller when it gets there. So that's, you know, a lot of people do that, call levels. They leave call levels. And then it would be, look, it would be better. You know, I think it would be much better. But I think most of the retail world, you know, they're brought up to, you know, have to put a stop loss in the market. So I don't know if we're ever going to get rid of them. So have I missed any questions? Probably. Do the banker broker know the order size? Yes, they do, Ken. Particularly if they're the prime broker, and then they know the exact position of their customers. Yeah, and they will know. They will also know if you consider the retail broker is also in essence a customer of the bank. So the bank also knows what positions, overall positions that the customers have. Oh, look at Ken. I don't. You know, it's not in the bank's interest to to hurt their customers. You know, I know. You know, some think they are, but in my experience, the banks are much more willing. They get paid. Really, they get paid on commission when the customer trades. That's really how they're getting paid. So they want people to trade. They're not taking the other side of the position. You know, not like what was it Goldman Sachs with the what am I trying to say here? The derivatives in the U.S. housing market, and they were taking the other side of the trade. So yeah. And they did it, but generally speaking, I don't think so. They're not, you know, they need their customers, the banks do, so they're not going to. Hopefully, anyway. So I think that pretty much covers everything. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, and yeah, I hope you have a very, very, very pleasant weekend. And yeah, I'll be back sometime in the early new year. Cheers. Yeah, TGIF. You're not wrong.